Since I was a kid, I've been fascinated by stories. Not just the what, but the how. How lives change. How moments unfold. I realize the answers, they aren't always in books, but they're with people too. That's why we started this show, to uncover the extraordinary in the everyday, one story at a time. Welcome again to ACTV Storytellers. This is a show where we chronicle the lives of fellow Anderson Countyans who have made a positive and lasting impact in our community and beyond. This is our first episode of Season 2. We kick off our second season by welcoming Sid Spiva to the Storyteller stage. Sid is absolutely impossible to pigeonhole. His accomplishments and achievements are all over the map, from being a professional musician touring with Dolly Parton, serving as an educator and administrator in Anderson County schools, to working in the ministry. Sid is truly a jack of all trades, and we began Season 2 of Storytellers welcoming Mr. Sid Spiva to the show.
Wow.
That's a lot to live up to.
It is. I like Season 2, Episode 1. That's better than
Episode 13.
Yeah, my lucky number.
Well, when you and I met, I wrote that down, and I was like, I gotta rebrand this so it won't be Episode 13.
Oh.
So it's going to be Season 2, Episode 1.
I like it. I appreciate it.
Well, hey, listen. Before we get started, I've got to be honest and let everybody know that you have had a huge personal impact on me. You were the person who persuaded me into going into administration. You were also the person who trained me for 2 years. So to whatever degree that has been a success or failure, you're in large part responsible. So I'm going to hand that to you.
Wow. Well, it was a good venture with you. Very good. And you've lived up to it. You've done very well, young man.
I appreciate that. You're
one of the success stories.
You were a big influence on me, still are. Times as an administrator when I've had some hard questions, there's still been times when I called you and asked you what I should do.
I've always got an opinion. It may not be right. But
well, your advice was always the same thing. It was like, well, you know right and wrong. Do what's right. That was pretty much what you do, the right thing. I was like, okay. Well, we're not here to tell my story. We're here to tell yours. So let's jump right into this. Clinton, that's where you grew up, but it wasn't always your home. Where did you guys come from, and what brought you down here?
Well, my mother and father were from North Georgia, Blairsville, Georgia.
Up here, I guess.
So they were from North Georgia, and so they met, dated for several months. They decide to get married, so they elope. They take off to Walla Halla, South Carolina.
Is that a real place?
That's a real place. Yeah, she's still there. I've been through there. You can still go there. Walla Halla, South Carolina. And I've asked Dad, I said, why'd you do that? Why'd you go? And he said, well, you didn't have to have a blood test to get married. And so, okay, so did you have to have anything? He said, no, you just show up, pay your money, say your vows, and you're married. And that sounds like my dad. He decided he's going to do something, he's going to do it. He's going to do it right then. Funny thing about it was my dad was 20 years old, and my mother was 16.
Whoa, scandal.
So I would have loved to heard that story when they came back and told their parents about it. But they came back to Blairsville and lived there for a short time, and then my dad got drafted into the Army, and this was right at the very end of the Korean War. And so he got drafted, and he was stationed in Fort Benning in Columbus, Georgia. So he got to stay in Georgia. And so a year into that, mother becomes pregnant with me. And so my dad had orders, after he came out of basic, he had orders to go to Korea. But since his wife was pregnant, they deferred the orders and let him stay in Fort Benning. And so I was born in an Army hospital in Columbus, South Carolina, Fort Benning. So a year into that, Dad got out of the Army, and so he says, well, I got to do something with my life. He said, I've got to have a trade. And so he entered an apprenticeship program at Delco Remy in Anderson, Indiana. So he moved the whole family to Anderson, Indiana. So when we get to Anderson, Indiana, by then there's two more boys in the family. So I've got two younger brothers. So he's in this apprenticeship for 4 years. So we're there, and so I'm getting up to school age, turning 6 years old, and that fall I was supposed to start school. And so Dad had just finished his apprenticeship program. He said, but we're moving south. We're going south. I have to get you south because you're starting to talk like a Yankee, and I can't have that. And so we did. We moved to Clinton. Dad took a job at Union Carbide. He went to work at Y12 as a machinist and a tool and die maker. And so we moved to Clinton and rented a little house for a couple of years, and then Dad bought a piece of property in South Clinton. He bought 60 acres and built a house there. And so that's where I grew up, and that's where my parents lived until they passed. And home place is still there. And so this is really the only home I've ever really known was Clinton.
So you went, when you all moved down here, you were 6. You went to South Clinton Elementary, right? And then Clinton Junior High, and then Clinton High School. Mm-hmm. So you went through all your educational career in Anderson County.
I did.
Okay. But when you were going through school, you were also piddling around with something else that was pretty influential. What were you doing in your free time when you were young?
Oh, we piddled around with a lot of things. It was a great place to grow up. It really was. We did all kinds of things, and there wasn't a lot of neighbors around, really. In fact, when we moved into the house, half a mile down the road, our nearest neighbor there was J.D. Yarnell.
Mm-hmm.
It was
He became a judge.
It was Judge Yarnell in those days,
which
he was really the county. He called it county judge.
Mm-hmm.
Now we would call it the county mayor. So anyway, he just lived a half mile down the road. But his wife, Louise, when we first moved in the house, I remember a pie showed up at the house one day. And so where's this pie come from? Well, Mom says, well, our neighbor, Miss Yarnell, she baked this pie and she brought it to us as a housewarming gift. Well, didn't take us boys long to eat up that pie. So we devoured the pie. So Mom took the pie plate. She made another pie, put in the pie plate. And she handed it to me. She said, here, take this down and give this to Miss Yarnell and return her pie plate. So I did. So I carried it down there, took it to Miss Yarnell, and she just thought that was the grandest thing in the world. That's the kind of neighbors we had. Mm-hmm. We kind of took care of each other. Here we had a housewarming gift, and it went back, and the pie came back to the house. And J.D. and Louise had a daughter, Nancy. It was Nancy Yarnell. Nancy Yarnell later married Larry Foster. So that was Larry's mother-in-law, father-in-law at the time. But that was the kind of neighborhood we had. So we'd run the roads with our bicycles up and down and be gone all day. And sometimes we collect Coke bottles and put them in the baskets on our bicycles and go down to Kit's Corner Market and sell them for a penny a piece and buy a candy bar. But we spent a lot of time just running up and down the roads and stuff. And it was just a great place to grow up. So we got involved in a lot of things.
Now your dad, in addition to being like a tool and die guy, he was also a musician, and would have some fellows come around the house.
My dad was involved in a lot of things. He liked to trade and barter, and he always had buddies around and worked with a lot of people. But he liked music. He liked all kinds of country music, basically. Country music and bluegrass. That was his main thing. But he was really a country music junkie. He liked records. I mean, I can remember some of his buddies coming over and bring the old 78s and the 45s, and they'd sit down on the floor right in front of the stereo, and it was just a little old phonograph then, and they'd play music, and they would just play these records over and over and over. So Dad had a guitar, and he'd get his guitar out, and he would sit down and he'd play and strum and sing along. He'd have some of his buddies. And then as we were growing up, he always had buddies coming over on the weekend. Hey, bring your guitar over and let's play some this weekend. And they were just having fun, So Mom, she would bake a cake or some cookies, and we'd sit around and we'd listen and play music. So I just grew up in that environment. So,
Sounds like your dad had with the tool and die part and the music part, sounds like he was pretty influential for you.
Dad could do a lot of things. He could fix anything, build anything, make anything. I mean, my parents grew up during the Depression, World War II, and you didn't throw away anything. You kept things. If it tore up, you fixed it. If it was broke, you fixed it, you reused it. If the wheels fall off, you jack it up, put the wheels back on, you go again, and you use it up until it's totally gone. Didn't throw anything away. Dad was very handy. He could make anything. If you need a part, we didn't go buy it. You didn't spend money for things. You just make it. I'll just make it. I'll go to the machine shop and I'll make it. And he could do a lot of things. Later years, he got into old cars, wanted to build old cars. I remember his first project was he bought a 56 Chevrolet that had been hit in the front end, totally destroyed. Brought it home, put it in the yard. A few days later, another 56 Chevrolet shows up that had been hit in the rear end. And he took those two cars and cut them in two and put them together and made a beautiful car out of it.
And it ran.
It ran, drove. Oh yeah, I rode in it many times. he later sold it, but he went one project after the other. He would trade and barter, and he's one of those guys. He could take something small and he would trade it for something a little more valuable. Not that he wanted that item, but it was a little more valuable. So he would trade and trade up. So we always had an old car show up, or a piece of furniture, or tools show up, or something showed up all the time, and we just never knew what it was going to be. He brought a monkey home one time. A squirrel monkey. Had this great big cage. Brought this monkey home and brought it. Us boys thought it was the greatest thing in the world, Never had a live monkey.
How long did you keep it?
It didn't last too long. I don't know. 2 or 3 months, no more than 6. It wasn't popular with my mother.
She had her own monkeys to raise, I guess.
It was a pretty fascinating adventure. And so that thing, of course, we'd have to clean the cage. So every now and then you open the door, and you clean the cage, what monkey would get out? Well, if it'd get out in the room, it was bouncing everywhere. It was just it was just a wild animal. And we'd have to catch that thing, and it was an ordeal. But it's not that Dad wanted the monkey, but the monkey was more valuable than his last item, so he'd trade the monkey for something else. So he's always trading and bartering, and so that was quite an adventure.
Well, let's go. Let's turn to your school days for a second. As we talked about, you went through Anderson County schools, and you had told me before that for a lot of your life, furthering your education wasn't really, academically, wasn't really high on your list, but you met a teacher who was influential for you, a shop teacher, Harrison Marlowe. Mm-hmm. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I was really looking forward to going to Clinton High School and taking a shop class, because I'd been around all these tools and grown up with Dad and fixing things and doing things and working on the farm and tractor and liked woodworking and construction. So I want to take a shop class when I get to Clinton High School. It was offered. It was on the schedule. So I signed up for it. So when I get to Clinton High School, school started that fall, and we have to drop this shop class because we don't have a teacher. We can't find a teacher. And so I had to drop it and take something else. Next school year came around, it started out the same sort of thing. We can't find a teacher. Well, we're fixing to drop it again, and then all of a sudden they find a teacher, and this teacher shows up, Harrison Marlowe. He's from Campbell County up here at Jacksboro. And so Harrison was the teacher, and so he taught drafting and woodworking. And I signed up for both classes, and I just learned a lot because it was what I wanted to do. It wasn't your traditional academics that sometimes I couldn't connect the dots, didn't know why I needed this, but this was something tangible, something I really wanted to do, and I liked it. And I felt like I was pretty good at it. And so I learned a lot from Harrison Marlowe, but he took a real interest in me. Why, I don't know. He did a lot of students, not wasn't just me. But he was, I remember he was one of the first teachers that ever came to me and said, hey, this afternoon I've got a project I'm working on. I've got to go to Knoxville to pick up some material. Would you like to go with me? Well, I never socialized with a teacher before, not outside school. So, yeah. So we jump in the truck and we go to Knoxville and stop and get something to eat, get a milkshake, hang out, get material, come back. And it's like two good old boys, you know. I just thought that was the coolest thing in the world, you know. But he really took an interest in me and kept telling me, he said, you know, you can do a lot of things. He said, you really need to further your education somehow. And I was getting to be a senior. That next year I was a senior, and so really not knowing what direction I'm going to go, like most seniors. Really hadn't prepared in high school. I'd gone through high school and just flip-flopped around, and as long as I made a C or above, I was good at home. My parents wouldn't say anything. You know, you passed, you're okay. But I really didn't apply myself. I could have done a lot better, but I didn't apply myself like a lot of other students. And so Harrison says, you know, we need some more shop teachers in this world. He said, you like this, you're good with people, why don't you become a shop teacher, take industrial arts in high school, graduate in industrial arts, and you'll have that as a base. Nobody can take that away from you, and that's a jumping off place. And you could always teach, but you could always do some other things beyond that. You know, you could work in engineering, you could work in construction, anything mechanical. You've got that base, and you'd have a college education. College education was never on my radar, never. But he instilled that in me and made me, it just built some pride up, and I thought, well, if he thinks I can do it, maybe I can. So I go
pretty
to
important
guys.
message there about having somebody that believes in you.
There is a message there. And my parents, don't get me wrong, my parents believed in me, no doubt about it. And always, you know, pushed me to do my best and so forth. I can't take anything away from that. My parents were great. And, you know, Dad would always say, hey, remember who you are, remember where you came from, always. You know, but he instilled all those values, you know, good morals, and when you shake a man's hand, that's your bond, and the Spiva name means something, and remember who you are and where you came from. And so the college just wasn't something that it was nice to talk about, but Dad was a trades guy, and if you go to a trade school and learn a trade, you're great. Mom would mention college, and she thought that was great. There just wasn't any college graduates in my family, you know. So anyway, well, maybe I can do this. So I go to the guidance office, talk to my guidance counselor, and they just look at me and kind of like you are right now and just kind of laugh. What, you want to go to college? Well, look at your transcript here. There's no way. You don't have the grades. You haven't applied yourself. There's not a college going to take you. You can't do. You're never going to get in. You can't do this. So I left defeated on one hand, but thinking, man, I can't let this defeat me. No, so I had a challenge. So I started applying to some schools. Took the ACT, which I had a horrible score. Horrible. I'm not even going to share with you what that was. But it was a horrible score, and I just didn't test well, for one thing. I knew that. I was not a good reader in school. Still not a real good reader. I understand the importance of it, and you have to read. And I forced myself to read a lot of things. And later on in life, I had to force myself to read a lot of things. But I was just not a good reader. I just wasn't a good test taker. A lot of times I could do things, but it didn't come across on a written test. Anyway, I started applying to a few schools, and I applied to a little school down the road at Madisonville here, Hiawassee College. It was a junior college, 2 years, 2-year school, and I got accepted. And I was thrilled to death when I got that letter. I could not wait to get to the guidance office, took it up there, threw it down on the desk. Guess what? Look here what I got. And again, they kind of looked at me and laughed and said, well, you might have got in, but you're not going to make it. Well, I had another challenge. And so I did. I graduated high school. And I went that summer. I thought, well, if I'm going to flunk out, I'm going to do it first thing. So I went to summer school and took chemistry and 2 or 3 other things I'd never had in high school. I thought, shoot, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right now. But I did okay. Yeah, I struggled. No doubt about it, I struggled. But I finished down there in a little less than a year and a half. And I thought, well, I can do this if I apply myself. And so after graduating there, I transferred to East Tennessee State University.
You were a Buccaneer.
And I was a Buccaneer, and they had the best industrial arts program around, and they were known for that. And if you finished that course, you could teach, yes, but you could also go into engineering, construction. So it was a good base, a good jumping off place.
So here you are with a high school diploma, and through the encouragement of a teacher, you find yourself a college graduate. Mm-hmm. Maybe from the encouragement of a teacher and the discouragement of others, you felt that was a challenge.
I owe it to Harrison Marlowe, I really do. And I've thanked him many times for that, because I've stayed in touch with him over the years, because he still lives in Jacksboro.
That's pretty cool.
And I've stayed in touch with him and thanked him many times. Yeah.
So I'm gonna. You've got your college degree, and I'm gonna put that on the shelf for a minute, because we're gonna your life. You described your dad as being a jack of all trades. Well, we're going to find out you're kind of a jack of all trades, because while you were going to school, or before that, when you were younger, you started picking up an instrument. It wasn't necessarily the guitar. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, my dad would always have these guys over and play these jam sessions and so forth. And of course, we were young boys, me and my brothers, and because we saw all that and we were influenced with that. And so, Dad would say, hey, don't you want to learn how to play something? You want to come up here? You want to sing? You want to sing? Well, I'm no singer, that's for sure. Nobody's ever asked me to sing. So, but playing music, I started getting interested in it and looking around. Dad would say, "What do you want to learn to play an instrument? What would you want to learn how to play?" And so I would see all these guys sitting around with all these flat top guitars and instruments. Everybody's playing the same thing. I thought, well, I could play one of them, but we've already got 10 or 15 of them. Well, I don't know, we need another one. But so I fooled around with bass guitar some and had a flat top guitar. But I would see these guys play a thing called a steel guitar, and I would see it on TV. And I'd point out to my dad, said, I don't know what that thing is, but I like it. And I like the sound of it, and I like the sound and makeup of it, because it was different. It was a mechanical piece. It was like a machine, because you play it, you pick it with your right hand, you hold a bar in your left hand, and then you sit behind it, and it has pedals on it. So you got pedals on both feet, and when you mash a pedal, it pulls a string or it lowers a string. So you get all kinds of combinations. So it's a mechanical piece. And you had your knees up under it, so it would have knee levers. So you'd have a lever on each side of your knee. And so you got both feet, both knees, both hands operating this thing all at one time. And that just fascinated me.
I've never heard it described like that, but now that you describe it, I can certainly see why that would be an interest of yours.
So that just fascinated me, and so I got interested in it. And Dad, being a barter and a tradesman, he started, we'll find you something. And so he came home one day with a little what you call a lap steel. It was nothing more than a pine board with 6 strings on it, really. and it plugged up into an amplifier. And so I picked around on it and plucked on it for a little while, and finally he took that and traded it for another one, a Gibson 6-string, and it was a little better. But I always said, I want to play that thing's got pedals, because Dad would also take us to other music venues. We would go to a concert, maybe over at the Civic Coliseum, and in those days, WIVK had what they called country shindigs, and they were package shows, and it was country artists coming through, and they might be 4 or 5 artists on a show with their band, and they would come through, and so he would take us to that, and I would see these live bands play, and they would have a steel guitar player. And again, I thought, that's just the coolest thing. And I thought, man, if I could ever learn how to play one of those, and if I could ever play on that stage right there on the Civic Coliseum, man, I would know I have made it right there. That would be a goal of mine right there. And Dad would take us to the Grand Ole Opry, to the old Ryman. We made a few trips to Nashville, not a lot, but some. And those were cool trips, and I learned a lot there. And so you this starts planting a seed. Hey, maybe I like this music industry, and I like what's going on, so I get to playing, and so I run into you kind of network with all these musicians, So this musician leads you to another one, and you're going to these venues, and you meet all these people, and so I'm starting to pick up some things and learn some things, and I meet a guy named Harold Flynn. Harold Flynn was an engineer himself, but he was a steel guitar player, a very good steel player. And so he took an interest in me as a kid.
So you're like, what, 14, 15?
I was 14 years old.
14 years old?
When I met Harold Flynn.
Okay.
And
so you're basically a high school freshman.
I was a high school freshman.
Okay.
I remember that very well because I played freshman football, and I had got hurt the weekend before I met him. We got tangled up in a tackle on the football field. Anyway, I had cut my head, and I had to have 5 or 6 stitches. I had a black eye. I remember, but it was the next week. I was a freshman, and so I was fall of my freshman year, 14, and I met Harold Flynn because I had a black eye the day I met him. So anyway, we had this conversation about that, but and so he invited me over to his house, and I went over to his house, and he had a steel guitar that had pedals and levers, and I thought, this is the greatest thing ever. It's the coolest thing I ever saw. And he said, well, I'll help you with it, but we're going to have to get you something to play. And so him and my dad got together, and they traded around and finally came up with a guitar for me to play. So he started helping me. And these were, I can't say they were formal guitar lessons. I didn't read music. He didn't read music. It was by ear. I mean, if you heard something on the radio and you liked it, well, let's figure out how to do this. And so you played by ear. And so that's a lot of the country music players, that's what they did. They just picked up and played by ear what they felt or improvised, and that's the way they did it. And so that's the way he taught me how to do it. And so after about 6 months, Harold was an engineer. He was a construction engineer, mechanical engineer. In fact, at the time, he was building the Twin Towers, TVA Twin Towers in downtown Knoxville. Okay. So the engineering firm he was working with, they were finishing up the job, and he got transferred to Kingsport. So there went the guy that was helping me. But he gave me a jump start, about 6 months of really how to start and get going. And so I started playing, and again, you just kind of network with other players. And in high school, you meet another boy that wants to play. And so you had these little bands, and you'd play these little things, somebody had something they wanted to do at church, we'd go play, or we'd go to this little dance, or there was a picnic somewhere somebody wants to play, and you go and you just start playing these things all over town, And the next thing you know, somebody says, well, hey, if we go over here, they'll pay us $5, so we'd go. Well, the next one, hey, there's a picnic over here, and a family picnic, and they'll give us $10 and they'll feed us. And so, well, good, let's all go. So we did that, and there was things to do like there. Share the 4-H club. They had a little talent contest they called Share the Fun, and so bunch we get together, and then there's a little talent contest, as a band. And so that just kind of rolled and rolled and rolled, and I was getting better and better and better at it. And then there was a guy here in Clinton named David Farmer. Well, David Farmer, he had a radio show on WYSH, Clinton Radio. He had a Saturday morning radio show, 30 minutes long, and he had a band, and he would sing, and they had sponsors. And so anyway, I got hooked up with David. David said, hey, why don't you come play with the band on the radio show? So then I'm about 15, half, almost 16. So we would go to the bass player's house on a Thursday night, I think, and we would sit in his living room. They'd put a mic out there, and we would record a 30-minute radio show. And so they would take that, and they would play it on Saturday morning.
Were you just playing like country standards or original stuff?
No, it was just country standards.
Okay.
It was all cover stuff.
Okay.
And David was considered a pretty good singer, and he was well known around this area, so he had connections, and so started hooked up with him, and Larry, my brother, my younger brother, he played guitar in the band. So we hooked up with David, and we started doing this radio show. I thought that was the coolest thing. I could turn on the radio on Saturday morning, and here we are playing. Wasn't a big deal, it wasn't great, but it was a jumping off place. It was a place to learn. It was a place to learn. I learned a lot of stuff, and so David took us to a lot of places, and we played a lot of things. We'd even get in the car somewhere and go somewhere over the weekend and play out of town. Here we are traveling, or I thought we were. In those
you're
days.
15 years old.
Yeah,
you're a kid.
So I played with him a year or two, and then David calls one day and says, "Hey, we got an invitation to go play at the Tennessee Barn Dance." Well, that was a whole different deal right there. Tennessee Barn Dance was a stage show and a radio show that was in Knoxville, and it was really patterned after the Grand Ole Opry, and it had a long history. The Tennessee Barn Dance started in the 40s, really, and it had some ups and downs, but it would kind of it would have a good period of time, really, really popular, and then it would kind of die off or something. Sponsors would break off, and then it would flare up again. But anyway, it really started in the 40s, and it ran through the end of the 80s. So it was it had a history, and a lot of people in this area came up through the barn dance. Chet Atkins and Archie Campbell, they were on the early shows, and Red and Fred, and a lot of people came up and got a start. But it was really patterned after the Grand Ole Opry, where it was a live stage show. You had a live band, and it was a staff band. So this staff band really played for every artist that came through. So if artists wanted to come through and sing, the staff band played for them. Now, if an artist came in and had their own band, they would bring their own band. So the staff band would come down, the traveling band would come in, and so and it was aired on WNOX radio. It played live on the radio on Saturday night. So it was an every Saturday night radio and live stage show. So David Farmer says, "Hey, we got an invitation to go play at the barn dance." Well, here's another step up. I thought, man, this is really cool. So we go, and I'm 16 by then, and we go to the barn dance, and David's band goes up, and we're just a young band. Me and Larry, we're just kids, and and people want you to play when you're young. Kids always steal the show, always. Doesn't matter whether you're good or not. I mean, if you're young and willing to get up in front of, you're cute in those days, It's not cute when you get this age, but people want to see that.
You actually got to be able to play when you get
Yeah,
older.
well, so we get up and we play, and it went pretty good. So we get an invitation to go back. So we kind of become regulars. So we're going every week, and so I got to meet a lot of musicians because the Tennessee Barn Dance was a magnet. It was a magnet for all of East Tennessee. If you were a musician or a singer, that was the ultimate to get there. That was your jumping off place. You had to go there. You had that. It was a place to come together, and you could network with people. And if you didn't get on the show, at least you met somebody that led you to this and to that. And so it was just a magnet, and people flocked in there. Well, you got on the show or not, people would be standing around watching, just looking. So we got the opportunity to play, and then as time went on, they had a steel guitar player on the staff band, Charlie Fingers. Well, Charlie got to where he was having some health issues. He was older, and he decided he was going to back away. And so the staff band came to me. They'd see me play and say, "Hey, why don't you come join the staff band?" Well, holy moly, that was just a dream come true for me.
And you're 16?
I'm probably 17 by then.
Okay.
And so this is just, this is just a dream come true. So
did you realize you were getting better? I mean,
well,
obviously you're practicing, but did you realize
I did. I realized I was getting better. Yes.
Okay.
But if you're going to get better, you got to be surrounded by people that are better than you. That's just a principle of life. You got to be around people that are better than you if you're going to get better. That gave me an opportunity to do that because these were some really good musicians, really good. And they took me under the wing and they taught me. And one thing I didn't realize, in those days, they liked to get young people in because they could train them the way they wanted to. You didn't have to be retrained. They would just train you and bring you up, and you made a great band member that way. So that's really how I learned how to play. Yeah, and you start doing that, and then other opportunities would come up. Another singer say, "Hey, well, I've got something to do next Friday night. Would you be willing to come play that?" And so it gave you other opportunities to go play with other people and other bands. Well,
and you're getting paid while you're in high school.
But this class, this place was just a magnet, and it's just unbelievable the people that came out of that. I mean, while I was there, I was there from age 17 to 20 on the staff band. All right, so while I'm there, there's a lot of other people that are about my age, within a year or two. They were coming in there playing too. We had a piano player, Eddie Wilson. Eddie Wilson played on the barn dance, but he went on to play with Jeannie Pruitt and then Loretta Lynn. Played with her for years on the road. Danny Hutchins was another piano player. He wound up with Charlie Pride. Played with Charlie Pride for 30 years. Was his band member until the day he died. We had a guy named Darryl Pewitt, played guitar. Darryl had his own band, but he went on to Nashville, do a lot of professional things. Wound up in Houston during the Urban Cowboys scene, that whole deal. He played on a lot of that stuff and was very influential with that.
I want to tell a funny story about you, and because you and I have some personal things that have kind of overlapped, and I want to tell this story since you mentioned those people. So I remember I used to beat and bang on the drums a little bit when I was younger, and I remember you called me one day and said, "Hey, we need a drummer for church Sunday. Would you be willing to set in?" And I said, Sure, I'll come play. So I drive to your all's church. And I'm thinking this is a bunch of just church hack musicians that are up there just, trying to hammer out some 4/4 praise and worship stuff and move on. That's what I'm geared up for. So I walk in with my sticks, and I sit down behind the kit that's up on the stage. And everybody fiddles for a minute. And you kind of getting loose. And we start to play. We're probably about 8 measures in till I realize there's there's some dudes up here that could play. And Jason Chambers comes over to me, and I'm like, Chambers, who are these people? And I don't remember all specifically, but I remember Jason walked around. He goes, you see that guy over there? And I said, yeah. He goes, well, he used to play with Charlie Pride. And you see that guy over there? Well, he played with, I don't remember, Barbara Mandrell, somebody. And he's going around the stage, and he's pointing all these people, and they're all professional musicians. And I'm sitting up there, and I'm thinking I'm going to be playing with these, a bunch of local church guys that are just trying to, and you've got me into, I am definitely the most unprepared musician on the stage, but it was
not at all. You fell right in there. You right. These were all my friends. See, we all grew up together. I mean, we had a guy named Steve Gully. He was at the barn dance. Well, Steve Gully he was huge in the bluegrass field. Ava Barber, well, she was a singer on the show. Ava Barber went to the Lawrence Welk show. Lawrence Welk show was not really a country show, but they had a country singer named Lynn Anderson. And Lynn Anderson had a hit song, Rose Garden. Well, when she had a hit song, she left the Lawrence Welk show, and that left the spot. Ava Barber left the Tennessee Barn Dance and went to L.A. to be on that show. So you're on national TV now. We had a guy from Jacksboro that came down. He would hang around the barn dance, and he would sing from time to time. Name was Dean Dillon. You ever heard? You know Dean Dillon?
Big writer.
Dean Dillon, famous songwriter.
Yeah.
He put George Strait on the map. George Strait recorded hit after hit after hit. Dean Dillon is now in the Country Music Hall of Fame. So these are the guys that I grew up with, and people, and so we were all together, a lot. We had some of the older guys in the band, and we had a guy named Ralph Loveday. Ralph Loveday was kind of a local celebrity. He'd had some songs out, and in those days you could go to WIVK, which is the biggest radio station around, and if you got to know the DJs and the program directors, they would play your songs. Well, Bobby Denton was the program director, and so Ralph would go over and pitch his songs, and they'd play them, and they was all over East Tennessee. Well, Ralph, he was just a local celebrity, and so I was getting to play music with these guys, and I was just in awe.
And he was pretty influential in introducing you to somebody that changed your life.
Well, Ralph was let me tell you this. So everybody's hanging out at the barn dance. And so I'm 18, I'm playing in the band, and I look down the audience, and there's this pretty little girl sitting there. So I go down, and I start a conversation, and so we start hanging out and start dating. Her name's Judy.
Same name as your wife.
Come to find out, we wound up getting married later. But the funny thing is, Judy's father was Ralph Loveday. Now, I had been in the band with him for 2 years and didn't even know he had a daughter. Now, that was probably by design on his part, but that's the way it happened. And so Judy, I met Judy at Tennessee Barn Dance, and we dated for a couple of years, got married, and she wasn't singing on the show at that time, but she said, well, I'm going to hang out with you. I'm going to sing on the show. So, so she joined the Tennessee Barn Dance. In fact, if you Google Tennessee Barn Dance right now and pull up Wikipedia, it'll give you a list of performers, and you'll see Ralph Loveday's name and Judy Spiva's name on that list of performers on there. And so,
well, Ralph also introduced you. I think this is a funny story. You get you're meeting all these people, and you're networking with all these people, and you get a call from your future father-in-law, and I can only imagine. But he says, "Hey, Sid, you need to call this person. They're looking for a steel player."
Well, they did. I was at ETSU going to school, and Judy and I had decided to get married, and we had a date set, so we were engaged. If I turned on the radio in those days, the number one song on the radio was Dolly Parton singing "I'll Always Love You." It was the number one song.
Yeah.
Well, I get a call from Ralph Loveday. He said, "Hey, Sid, Dolly Parton is leaving Porter Wagner's show, and she's going to start her own band." So it had been Porter and Dolly for years.
Yeah.
And so she's getting to be more popular than Porter, and so she's going to break off and start her own road show. Well, Ralph knew her whole family from Sevierville, okay? So the whole Owens family, so Lewis Owens was Dolly's road manager. So Lewis Owens calls Ralph Loveday and says, "Hey, Dolly's going to start her own band. Do you know any steel players? We're looking for a steel player." So he says, "Sure." Said, "My future son-in-law plays steel." So we'll check with him, see if he'd like to do something. So he did. Ralph called me, and I thought, this has got to be a dream. This is just something out of the blue, something I hadn't expected. But Ralph said, "If you're interested, we'll set up an interview." I said, "Well, sure. Well, don't say no to this." And so Ralph did. He said, "Well, Dolly's coming in. She's going to be in Sevierville in like 2 weeks or so. She's coming in to see her family, and we'll set up an interview." So he did. He set up the whole thing. So he made arrangements for Dolly to come to his house in South Knoxville. And so Dolly showed up at his house I think it was a Sunday afternoon, and we went over to the house. And I mean, it's just a small frame house in South Knoxville where Judy grew up. And so here's Dolly, and then she's got a bass player with her brother Randy, and she's got her cousin Dwight Puckett. He's going to play drums in the band. And so I'm there, and there was a guitar player that came with me, Chub Beeler. And so we gather up, and we're in the basement, and this is like going to one of my dad's jam sessions. And so we sit around and we pick and we talk and we introduce ourselves and get to know each other. And so we played for, I don't know, an hour or so. And so we were laughing and telling jokes and things. And it was just a really good visit, not like a formal interview or anything. And so we left there, and they said, "Well, we'll be in touch." I thought, well, that's the last I'll ever hear of that, So it was fun. So I get to chalk that up. It was fun. So I go back to school. Well, about 2 weeks later, her road manager called and said, "Hey, you've got the job if you want it. And you're going to need to be in Nashville on so-and-so day."
So you go to this rehearsal, and you play with Dolly, and then you go back to school thinking you're going to just finish school, and then you get this phone call, and your life is about to fundamentally change.
It's an adventure. It's an adventure. It has all been an adventure. My whole life's been that way.
So when you get the offer to play with Dolly in her band, how long does it take you to say yes?
It took me a little while.
Really?
It did. I didn't say yes right off the bat because there's some things to consider here. Because Judy and I were going to get married. Well, this changes the whole complexion of marriage. And we talked about, well, maybe we shouldn't get married. This is going to take place. So there's that to consider. I had college, and am I going to quit my college? Am I going to finish this? I had that to consider. So I did. I thought long and hard about this, but every time I turn that radio on, here's this number one song playing. And so it's like it's screaming in my face, you need to do this. So Judy and I talked about it, and I talked to my parents about it. And I thought, if I don't do this, this is going to be the only opportunity I will ever have. A chance like this just doesn't come along. And so I'm 20 years old at the time. And I'm thinking, it had always been a dream of mine to do this. But here's an opportunity to make that dream come true. And so ultimately, I've got to do this. I've got to do this. And so Judy and I agreed we're going to go ahead and get married, and we're going to go for this. I remember going to tell my parents. I called my parents and said, "Hey, I'm coming by." So we did. And I drove up in the driveway, and they came out to meet me at the car. And I told them, "Say, hey, I've decided to take this job, and we're going to move to Nashville." And my mother bursted out in tears, and she cried, and she said, "You will never finish school. If you quit school, you'll never finish school." I said, "Mom, I can always finish school, but I can't always get a job to go play on the road with Dolly Parton." And she just cried and went in the house, walked off. My dad shocked me then. Dad says, "You know that musicians are the scum of the earth, don't you?" And really, you telling me that after all this, and you pushed me and encouraged me, this is what you got to say? He said, "Just remember who you are and where you came from." That was the end of that conversation. Okay. So we did. We got married, and we got married on a Friday night, and Saturday morning we were headed toward Nashville looking for an apartment.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I have titled this part of our time together as the Dolly years, because there's some questions that I have for you, but there's some other things that I think you're uniquely qualified to speak on. So my first question is this. So for years I've read this story. Well, first of all, apparently Dolly Parton wrote "I Will Always Love You" and Jolene on the same day. That's what I've read. But I also read this story that and for people who are younger, maybe they won't understand this, but like this was at a time when Elvis Presley was at his peak. I mean, Elvis Aaron Presley he's the king, right? So he calls Dolly. I've read this story that he called Dolly and asked if he could record "I Will Always Love You." Well, the way it worked, as I understand it in those days, was when Elvis wanted your song, that means he bought it from you, and it was his song, and it was no longer your song. And then Elvis had it, and he recorded it, and that was it. But he calls Dolly, as I have read, and asked Dolly to have "I Will Always Love You." And she's young. I mean, she's in her 20s, right, at this time? 20-ish?
I was 20 when I went. She's 8 years older than I am, so she was
28.
28, yeah.
And she tells Elvis no, that that she's not going to sell him her song. And of course, it ended up making her a gazillion dollars. And then when Whitney Houston recorded it, it even made her more. Is that true? Did she tell Elvis no?
I was there during that time. I can tell you this, Dolly, she always had a goal. Always had a goal. I always wanted to be the number one entertainer in the world. She'd say that. I want to be the number one entertainer in the world. And you're right, at that time, Elvis was the number one entertainer in the world at that time. She said, "I want to be bigger than Elvis Presley. I want to be known as one name, Dolly, not Dolly Parton. And I want to be bigger than Elvis." She used to say that. Well, Elvis did want to record the song, but it was Colonel Tom Parker, his manager, called Dolly.
Okay.
It wasn't Elvis himself. Elvis and Dolly never met.
Really?
No, they hadn't met at that time. I don't think they ever did. I may be wrong about that, but
she's from East Tennessee and he was from West
I don't think
Tennessee.
they ever talked in person.
Wow.
That I'm aware of. But at that time, the Colonel had called, which he managed Elvis.
Sure.
And true, he wanted to record it. And when he did that, he said, when he records it, I want the biggest majority of the rights. Okay, I don't know that he wanted. I don't know where he asked for all of them, but I know he wanted way more than 50%.
Mm-hmm.
And Dolly told him no. Said, "I would love for him to do the song. I would like for him to record it, but I cannot give the rights up."
That is phenomenal to me, that somebody 28 years of age at that time, with Elvis being who he was, that she had the wherewithal to. I mean, I understand you're talking to Colonel Parker, but having the wherewithal to tell Elvis no. That you can't have this song. I mean, who does that?
Dolly came across, in those days especially, she came across as this dumb blonde that liked to giggle a lot and have fun, make fun of things. But she had a lot of good business sense. She was always thinking 10 years ahead of everybody else, always. She was always way out there. She wasn't thinking about tomorrow, next week, next month. She was way out there. And so just wanting to be known as the number one entertainer, she was going to have to do some other things. And Nashville couldn't always provide what she wanted. So she always had a goal out there, always. I've told you this story, but we were traveling on the road. We were in Anaheim, California.
Yeah, I wanted you to tell that one.
We were in Anaheim, California. We played a show that night, and so we left the next morning.
And this is 1975?
This was 1974, I guess.
74?
74,
Okay.
75. I was there 2 years, 74, 75.
So this is a fantastic story. So to put it in perspective, this is 1974. She's late 20s, early 30s, running there, somewhere around in that age. And then this story happens.
So we're leaving Anaheim. And as you come out of Anaheim, there's a big mountain there, and it's got Hollywood, big letters.
Big Hollywood sign.
Big Hollywood.
Everybody
We've
sees-
all seen that, okay? So she's sitting on the couch in the front of the bus, and we're all up front, and we're sitting there chit-chatting and talking, so we drive by the mountain with Hollywood. And she looks up and looks out the window. She said, "That ought to say Dollywood." And of course, we all just laugh and go on, you know. And thought, well, that's a cool story. Well, you jump forward to, I guess, 1987, 12 years later, she has the opportunity to put her name on the old Silver Dollar City.
Yeah.
And make Dollywood.
And it's the most, as I understand it, it is the most visited theme park in the country, even outdoing Disney, which I didn't know that, but apparently it gets more visitors than Disney.
But look what she's doing. Every year it's something new, something new. It doesn't stay stale. It's always something new. A new ride, new hotel, new this, new that. And that's the way Dolly thought all the time. She wasn't thinking about short term. It was always long term. And so she really had a lot of good business sense. And Dolly was really good about, she made a lot of good decisions, but she knew how to get the right people around her too. And again, just like I said about musicians, you got to have somebody better than you are before you get better. She was good about getting people around her that were better. So in Nashville, she knew she was getting to a point where she had kind of topped out, because she could go on and continue to record, still make money. But she had bigger vision. She wanted, if you're going to be the number one entertainer in the world, you're going to have to diversify and get out and do some other things. And so she was always had that smart business sense. Her and Porter, when they split up, they're dividing all their stuff, and they had some business ventures together. They had a recording studio in Nashville, Fireside Recording. And it was a good working studio. Worked a lot. I've played there some. We recorded there some. Never did release anything, but some demos and some things. But it was a top-notch professional studio at the time. And Porter loved the studio. Mm-hmm. He liked to go down to the studio and play and record and do this and do that, bring different people in. So it was a plaything to him, but he loved it. Well, they owned this studio together. They also owned a publishing company together. And so I'm not exactly sure all the songs that were on it, but I know they owned it together. Well, so they have this split, and they're dividing up things. And so Porter comes to Dolly and says, "Hey, since we're dividing things up, I really like this studio. I would really like to have this studio, and I don't think you care much for it. I would really like to have a studio." Well, Dolly, she was very polite about it. And she said, "Well, Porter, I'll take care of it. If you really want that studio, I'll let you have the studio, and I'll take the publishing company."
Which is where all the money gets
and
made.
she was
in music
really
business.
polite about it and everything, and he was thrilled to death. And so she takes the publishing company, he takes studio. Now, studio is just like any other business. You're married to it. You got to work it. You got to have clients. You got to have cash flow. You tie hours and hours into it. Well, Porter liked the fun and games of it, and he wanted to play with it when he wanted to, but he was not willing to put in all the extra work. In about 3 years, it went belly up. Publishing company's still going, as far as I know.
Dolly's still making money off
it. It brings a check every month. So see, it's just good business sense. So Dolly was getting to, even when we were there, she wanted to be bigger, and so she was going to have to get out and do some other things. She even talked about movies and other things, which she went on to do. But she had a goal. If I'm going to get there, I've got to. Some of these people that are around me, I'm going to have to shed some of the skin that I've got around me and go do something new. Mm-hmm. Dollywood helped her do that too, because when Dollywood came along, she gets to put her name on it, which gives her notoriety, no doubt about it. But it gives, she becomes a hometown hero. The biggest employer in the county, Sevier County, was Dollywood, or Silver Dollar City at that time. So she saves the biggest employer. So she's a hometown hero. And it gave her a place to move some of these people that were around her. They could go to Dollywood. They could produce shows at Dollywood. They could perform at Dollywood on the stage. And so it gave that whole crew a place to go and employment. And she could go to Hollywood. She could go to New York. She could do these other things that she wanted to do.
And make movies.
And she like she had a master plan all along.
Well, let me ask you this, because you've got some. I know you've played Madison Square Garden. I know you've played Grand Ole Opry, some of the biggest theaters and stages in the world, and you played with a lot of huge country music stars. I want you to tell the Merle Haggard story about when you all were touring with Merle Haggard, and he was the featured artist, but when it came to his time, he wasn't to be found. Tell that story.
Merle, we did a tour on the West Coast, about 10 days, something like that, up and down the West Coast, and it was a package show, and so it was Don Bowman. He was the comedian. In those days, he came out and did a little act. He was really funny.
So it was all these people on the same label?
I think so. Well, no, I'm not going to say that. I think not on this particular one.
Okay.
We did a lot of RCA package shows where they were all on the same label. Mm-hmm. But this one, Dolly was on RCA. I think Hag was on a different label. But anyway, Don Bowman was a comedian. Dolly's road show was there, and then you had Merle Haggard and the Strangers. So you had 3 acts, and they put together this whole tour up down the West Coast. It was a different place every night, and so it was a good tour because once you started, you got to play the show, and then they had hotels every night. That didn't always happen on the road. A lot of times on the road, you would play a show and you would pack your stuff up and you get on the bus and you may have to ride all night to get to the next place and spend the night on the bus. But this was a good tour, so you got to spend a nice hotel. So the pattern was always the same. You get up and you jump on the tour bus and you run about 200 miles or so to the next town, which was close in those days. 200 miles on a tour bus is nothing. And so you get to the show early afternoon, you sit up, do a sound check. They always had a buffet, and it was first class. Played the show that night, pack up, go. That was the pattern. So we had done 2 or 3 nights of that. And so Merle, in those days, he had his own bus for him, and the Strangers had a bus. That was the first act I ever knew, especially in country music. That was unheard of.
All right.
2 buses for 1 act. Well, that's really big time. And so that's pretty common now to have a whole fleet of buses. But in those days, Merle had 2 buses, him and a bus driver, and whoever he wanted to take for a guest, and that was it. And the Strangers and the band, the road crew, took the other bus. So anyway, we get up one morning, and we're getting together, and we all gather up the bus. Well, Hag's bus is gone that morning. The Stranger's bus is there, his band, but his own personal bus was gone. So the driver's gone and Hag's gone. So nobody knows where he is. Nobody knew. Well, Bob Eubanks was the promoter.
The Dayton game.
The Dayton game.
I remember that.
That was big in those days. Well, he put this together. He was a promoter. Well, he was livid. He didn't know where Hag was, and so anyway, we all get on the bus and we take off. We go to the next town. We get to the next town, still no Hag. Well, we do our sound check, have the buffet that night, still no Hag. It comes time to do the show. Well, Don Bowman goes on first, and this is a big Coliseum. And so Don Bowman comes out and does his comedy bit. And then right when he gets through his comedy bit, then that's about 30 minutes. And then we would take the stage and we'd do an hour with Dolly. Okay, so we did ours and they take an intermission. Well, we do our bit, they take an intermission, still no Hag. Well, Bob Eubanks about to have a fit, you know. And this is almost a funny situation, you know. So
except for him.
Except for him, right. So anyway, the Strangers, they take the stage, and so Don Reno was the front man those days, and so Don Reno comes out, sings 2 or 3 songs, and up pulls Hag's bus. Well, Hag steps off the bus, and he's got these old dirty clothes on, like he's been working in the field all day long. They hand him a guitar, and he goes straight to the stage, and they say, "Here's Merle Haggard." Place goes crazy. He did a great job that night. Everybody did their thing. Everybody's just kind of looking. All the Strangers, they're hee-hawing, you know. They're just all laughing and going on about it. Well, after the show, what had happened is he got up that morning and said he wanted to go fishing. And we're in California, and he knows where there's a great fishing hole. That's his backyard. He grew up there. So him and the bus driver, they go fishing all day. And they still make it to the show.
So walks in straight from fishing.
Walks straight in there.
Walks in, plugs in, plays.
Yeah, that's a lot of these shows we did. A lot of these package shows and all these artists. It's what goes on behind the scenes is just unreal. It's just amazing. Just amazing.
He cooked you his favorite meal once too, didn't he?
He did. He did. While we were on that same tour, Dolly and Hag were talking about songs they had written and things coming up. And Merle says, "Hey, Dolly, why don't you come over to the bus tonight and I'll play you some of these demos that I got. In fact, why don't you just bring the whole band?" We were all standing there when he said that. So in fact, just bring all the guys and come on over to the bus and I'll fix us something to eat. Well, what do you say to Hag, you know? So yes, I mean, we couldn't wait to get there. So we go to the bus and he fixed soup beans, a big pot of soup beans and cornbread. He had a little kitchenette on the bus there, which is, you know, pretty typical on a bus. And so he'd fix soup, beans, and cornbread. And so we all got us a bowl of soup, beans, and cornbread, and he had a nice stereo system in that bus. And they played demos and sit there and sang, and it's just unbelievable. I mean,
so you're doing all this, and it's got to be like you got to be living a dream. I mean, you're doing this. I mean, like, because there was a point in my life when I thought, now your background is country, but I was always around rock and roll, and I wanted to do this rock and roll thing. You know, travel on the bus and play music, and I thought that would be fantastic. But that wasn't what you experienced after some time.
Well, I mean, it's what you see out front and what happens behind the scenes is two different things. But I had some great experiences. We went to London, England. In those days, again, it was the Wimbledon Country Music Festival in London, England. Well, that was a big thing. That was a huge deal. And so Dolly played it that year. Well, Dolly comes to the band and said, "Hey, we got an opportunity to go to London and play. And not only that, we're going to allow you to take your spouse with you if you want to go." So here's me and Judy. We jumped at the chance. Man, get to go to London, England. Oh, man, this is great. 2 20, 21-year-olds, you know, from South Knoxville and Clinton, Tennessee, going to London. 2 hillbillies in London, England. Oh, this is great. So we did. We got on a 747 in Nashville, Tennessee, and it was like who's who of country music. George Jones and Tammy Wynette were there.
Wow.
Yeah, Barbara Mandrell and her band. I go on. The whole 747 was full of country music stars and their bands. So we fly out to London, England, and when we get there, we're there for 3 days. And we have to play a show the first day. We had the second day off. The third day we had to play a show. So we get to London, spend the night. Next morning we get up and we're going to play at Wimbledon. This is the same place where they play tennis.
Right.
Okay? Huge arena. I don't know how many thousand were there. Huge arena. And they're going crazy for country music. It was just like it'd been in a different world. And it was a different world to us.
I want you to know, see, when you told me this story and when you tell me that you and Judy were, I thought you were about to tell me that you met the Beatles, and I was really excited. I thought there was John Lennon, and I was going to get, but that's not what happened.
No, this would have been 75, so the Beatles were already broke up.
Yeah, they already broke up, yeah.
No, so we get there, and we have to do a lot of promos with BBC, the British Broadcasting.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to do a lot of promos things, so there's tents set up outside the arena and all this stuff, and it's cold. This was in March, I think, and it was cold as whiz. And so we're all bundled up, and all this stuff was outside. Well, we get to the arena, and we played the big show, and it was just fabulous, And so we played the first day and had a great day. And so the second day we had off. We didn't have to do anything. You got the day off. And so Dolly, everybody wanted to take Dolly out and go somewhere. So, Dolly got with the group, and they went to some castle somewhere, big deal. And I thought, man, I'd love to go do that, but we had to stay there in town. Anyway, all the guys in the band, and I had Judy with me. In fact, she was the only spouse that went. The other spouses couldn't go or didn't want to go. And we jumped at the chance, So I had Judy with me. It's great because she didn't get to travel with us. Mm-hmm. So it was just an odd deal. So we're soaking it all up. And so we agreed to get up the next morning and go see London, England. So the next morning comes, I'm in the lobby and nobody else is there except me and Judy. So I get on the house phone and try to call these guys, and no, I don't think I want to go. We were up late last night, or we were doing this or that, or, they just didn't want to go. I'm going to sleep in. We'll go later. Fine. So me and Judy took off. We were just two hillbillies in London. I mean, we saw, Big Ben and London Bridge and the changing of the guard at the palace, and ate at 2-3 different places. We had a fabulous day. It was just great. And didn't know where we were going, what we were doing, riding double-decker buses and walking, and must have walked 100 miles that day. Anyway, we come back, and as soon as we walk in the lobby, some of the guys were there and said, hey, we're ready to go now. So, well, we're done. It's dark now. We've already seen it. I thought, man, you just missed it. Just missed it. And so we got the next morning, third day, and we played the same routine, played the arena, and then we flew home the last day. But that was a great ride. Being on a 747 with all these people and
sure.
And being with our musicians and trading stories, and that was a fabulous time.
What made
another little deal we got to do that year? I don't know where I shared this with you, but we got to go to the CMA Awards that year.
Okay.
Dolly was up for vocalist of the year, and so again I got to take Judy with me, and we went to the Opera House to the CMA Awards. That was a great deal. Johnny Cash was the MC, and
get to meet Johnny?
I didn't get to meet Johnny. We were in the audience. They were on stage, but it was a great, just to be there. I'd seen it on TV so many times, and that was a neat deal. She didn't win that year, but the very next year she did win vocalist, female vocalist.
I remember having a conversation with somebody the other day, last week. We were talking about Johnny Cash, and I told him, I said, here's the thing about Johnny. If there's 5 guys in the room and one of them's Johnny Cash, one thing is certain. You're not the coolest guy in the room, because that would be Johnny Cash. Yeah. It doesn't matter who's in the room. If Johnny's in there, he's the coolest guy in the room.
Yeah.
So you decided to step away from, like most people would, this is an opportunity that most people would just squeeze all the juice out of. But you decided to step away from being a professional musician. What happened there?
Well, I mean, everything I just talked about is just lights and glamour and fame. There's not much fortune in it, but there's all this famous stuff.
There is for Dolly.
And get to meet all these people. That was a dream come true for me. Dream come true. And I wouldn't take anything for the experience. Not one thing. It was fabulous. But we were on the road a lot. We were on that bus a lot, and we would, ride all night. And I loved what we did when we were on stage at 1 hour a day. I loved the mixing and mingling with people around, which was like an hour before the show, maybe an hour after the show. So you say 3 hours a day, I really loved it. But there's another 21 hours in the day. And I'm riding on the bus, and I can't hardly sleep on the bus. And I'd been to college, and like I say, I was not a good reader, but I'm trying to stay up on things. So I try to read or study or something. I couldn't on the bus, and you're in a bunk, and your whole world is in a bunk. And on the bus, you would have like 3 bunks in a row, and so you got to lay down and get in it. I mean, it's like sitting a book on a shelf. You got to scoot in there, and then you're sitting right on top of a diesel engine. That thing's a roar and changing gears all night, and so you learn to sleep at different times, eat at different times. My whole system just stayed messed up all the time. And then when I would get home, here's my wife that I have just married, a brand new bride, and I've left her in Nashville at this little old apartment, and I take off to go see the world, and I come back. Well, I'm ready to chill out for a little while, but she's ready to get out and go do something, and so it's a strain on a marriage. There's just lots of pieces that that just didn't fit. I think some of this I'm just wasting my time. All these lights and glamour, it's great. Wouldn't take anything for it. But this is not what I want to do the rest of my life. There's got to be more to life than this. I remember being at the Grand Ole Opry with some of my friends that were my age. And we're in the backstage at the Grand Ole Opry, and we're looking around the green room. I said, looky here, look around this room. What do you see? And lots of times it was just old guys like I am now. They were sitting around, and they're just waiting to get on the Grand Ole Opry to play that next gig. That's all they were living for. But they've been around for the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and they're still doing this, running up and down the road. They got 3 or 4 ex-wives, or they got 10 kids they don't even see anymore, don't have a relationship, no family, no money. Some of them had to catch a ride to even get to the Grand Ole Opry, don't even own a car. And I'm thinking, this is not where I want to be in the future. And I talked to some of my buddies about that. We need to make plans better than this, because we don't want to be sitting around this room 30, 40 years from now. We need to be in a better place. We need to, watch our finances. We need to do some different things. Because you never know. There's a saying in the music business, one day you're eating chicken and next day you're eating feathers. And you never know when that's going to happen. And that happened to a lot of guys, I knew several guys in Keith Whitley's band later on. Keith Whitley was top of his game. I mean, number one. The guy goes home and drinks too much one night, too much alcohol, and he dies. Well, they called the band in the very next morning and said, turn your badges in, turn all your equipment in, so you're fired, you're gone. We don't have a show anymore.
The next day?
That was the next day. That's how quick it happens. And so I'm thinking, I want something more stable than that. There's got to be more to life than this. I wanted more out of life. And it was really working on our marriage, and me and Judy talked about it a lot. If we're going to save this marriage, we got to save this marriage. That's not an option. We got married, we made vows, and it's not an option. And that's the number one thing. And so we made the decision, hey, we're going to leave Nashville. I'm going to quit this road job, and I've had my fun. But Judy's got some things she wants to do in her life too, and she helped me live out my dream. I need to help her live out some dreams too. So this is a marriage. This is a partnership. It takes two to pull this wagon. So we made that decision together. So I went to Dolly and explained the situation. It wasn't a big deal to Dolly, really. I mean,
but who breaks up with Dolly Parton?
Well, we had a good conversation. But I mean, this is Dolly Parton. She can get anybody to play music for her, you know. After I left, I found out that there were some other people trying to jockey for my job anyway. I didn't know that till I left, but there were some other steel players, some other musicians that were trying to root me out, and that's just the business.
Yeah.
And I really didn't realize that. And here's another thing. I decided to leave, and I did. Left. We moved back to Johnson City, and I went back to school. But about 6 months later, Dolly let the whole organization go because she was moving on to bigger and better things, and she had to get rid of this old skin she had and these other people around her to get where she wanted. Just the very things that I'd heard her say. So had I stayed another 6 months or a year, I would have been looking for another job too. And you never know where that's going to go.
Is that when she moved to L.A. and started the movies?
She didn't move right then, but she had changed management, and she was gearing up to do that.
Okay.
So
6 months after you left, she disbanded it anyway.
She did.
And then you went back to school.
She took care of her organization, tried to get them other places.
Right.
Because it was going to be another 7 or 8 years before Dollywood came along. But that's just the way the music business is.
Right.
So I was there at just perfect timing. Just perfect timing.
So you go back to school. You leave Nashville, go back to school, finish your education.
Me and Judy moved to Johnson City. I finished school, and so I took a job at the Knoxville City school system, the old Knoxville City school system. So I took a job at Beardsley Junior High. Not the job I wanted, but it was a starting place. I got in the school system, and so Judy and I moved to Clinton. Rented a little house, and we lived there a couple of years, and I was teaching, and so 2 years later, I built my own house. The whole time I was in school, when I wasn't on the road, when I was in school, and when the first few years of teaching as a teacher, I was working construction jobs, building houses. As you know, a teacher doesn't make very much.
That's true.
So you always had to have a second job. So I was doing construction jobs, learned how to build houses and just construction. So I'd learned how to do that. And so a couple of years after moving back to Clinton, I thought, well, I'm going to build my own house. I can build my own house. I can do this. So we're, 26, 27. And but then we'd had our first child, Travis, boy. And so I've got one boy, and I got a second boy on the way, and I thought, well, I need to build a house, and so we built a house, physically built a house, me and Judy. I mean, every nut, bolt, and screw, nail, shingle, everything that went in this house, I built. And Judy, I remember we laid the block. We had 1,200 block in the basement, and me and Judy laid that block. Mix the mud, and I would build corners up, and Judy would run mud down the rows. And I'd lay the block, and then she'd run another row of mud. So we physically, when people say I built my own house, we physically built our own house. And so shortly after, our second son was born. And so we raised two boys in this house, still live in the same house.
I just want you to know, when we started this, you described your dad as, you said your dad could do anything. He could fix anything. He could do anything. I'm starting to see a recurring theme here with his son. I mean, like, you built your own house.
Dad left a legacy, no doubt about it. My dad just passed away. He was 93.
Wow.
And you talk about a life there, too. But he left a whole legacy. and remember who you are, remember where you came from. It's about shaking a man's hand and do what you say you're going to do, and look him in the eye when you shake the hand. I saw my dad make lots of deals with other men. It was just a handshake, and no contract. And that's the way we were raised. Me and my two brothers, we were raised that way. So it's about morals and standards, and we always went to church. So we grew up in church, and so Dad was, my parents were godly people, and my dad worked hard too. Mom worked hard. She was always a homemaker. Never worked outside the home, but worked hard, and volunteered a lot in church and things. And but one thing my family did is you had to be home every night for supper. Every night. Me, my two brothers, Mom and Dad, we all sat down every night and had supper together. And I mean, that was non-negotiable. You had to be there. I don't care what's going on. So we sat down, we had supper, and somebody would say the prayer. We'd pass that around, from night to night to night. But that was an every night thing. That was non-negotiable.
So what made you decide to be a teacher? I mean, what was it about teaching that you liked?
Well, Harrison Marlowe had a lot to do with that. He made a huge impact on me, and I kept hearing those words. You can always be a teacher, but you can always be other things. And I kept thinking, man, I didn't have a teacher for a couple of years in high school. I missed out, and I sure would like to, instill things in other people. And I always thought, well, teaching and helping somebody else along, if it wasn't for a teacher, I'd never graduate from college. He instilled a lot in me. So it was really Harrison and the values he put in me and just believing in me. So that's really what. And I'll share this with you. Another thing, I'll go back when we were on the road. If we were playing in the Midwest, we played a lot of fairs. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, you go play at a fair. Usually you'd do a show like 2, 3 o'clock, and you do a second show later that evening, 7, 8 o'clock. So you had a lull time that you could get out and mingle around the fair and go get a hot dog, cotton candy, or something. So I'd always wind up at the pavilion where they had all the displays from the high school. The ag department in the Midwest. They got a lot of big ag stuff.
Yeah.
Well, there'd always be an industrial arts there where a shop class they've got a display where there's something they did for the machine shop class or construction class, and I would watch it and watch the kids gather around their projects, and parents, they're just glowing because here they're displaying, what they had done. I thought that was neat even in those days. Mm-hmm. So I had this little fire in me that I thought, well, I'd like to give back to somebody. There's a world out here bigger than me. It's bigger than me, and you're supposed to give back. I mean, we learned that from our dad, from our parents.
Well, you were pretty successful in school. You start teaching. You're doing this for a little while, and you find out you're going to win an award. What's that about?
Well, I'd been teaching in city system, and finally moved to Holston High School. Taught shop, and I dearly loved that, and had an opportunity to come to Anderson County Schools and teach, and so I did that. So I'm about 10 years into teaching now. This is 1987, and I'd had a really good year, and there was a lot of things that happened, and we had done a lot of things in the community and things with employers and some of the vocational industrial clubs. We had some success, but anyway. The school system, Anderson County Schools, nominated me for Teacher of the Year in the state of Tennessee. And this was a vocational education award. Mm-hmm. They had their own award program. And so it was the Trade Industrial Teacher of the Year. And so I was nominated by the local school system here, and I won it that year.
For the entire state of Tennessee?
For the entire state, yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
So it was very humbling, and a like I say, I'd had about 10 years in, so I'm starting to get this teaching thing down. I felt like, and we'd done a lot of good things that year, so I was very appreciative, and that was a humbling experience too. Yeah.
So you teach for 10 years ish, then you decide you're going to make a move into administration. How does that happen?
I don't know that I made that decision. So, coming up on 10 years of teaching, as you know, to keep your certification, you need to go back and get some coursework.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I got to get coursework, I may as well go back and get another degree, and that'll improve salary. That'll give me another degree. That always helps you. So I did. I went back to UT and got my master's degree. While I'm there, I thought, well, I don't want to do the same old thing. I want to get something else to go with it. So I got my administrator license at the same time while I was there. Had no intentions of ever using it, but it was in my back pocket if I wanted to. It's kind of a safety net. You always got to have a plan B. I always got to have a plan B. That was another thing my dad taught me. Always have a plan B. Take this music thing as far as you can go. It's great, but have a plan B. One day you're eating chicken, next day you're eating feathers, so you have a plan B. So, anyway, I have this license. I was happy doing what I was doing. At the time, I was teaching construction at ACCTC at the Tech Center, and I dearly loved it. We were building a house. I was taking high school kids and building a house every year. There's another thing. They told me that couldn't be done. I had people in the county said, you can't do that in 1 year. Well, just strap your seatbelt on and watch. And so we did it. So we went down to Indian Hill subdivision. We bought a lot and built a house in a year. And the next year we turned over and built another house. So we built 3 houses in there. But anyway, that's what I was doing. I loved it. But our school came up, and we were going to need a principal the next year. Our principal was leaving. And so Larry Foster had been principal, but he was moving to vocational director. And so Larry had done a great job, and Carl Hembry was first principal. Larry was the second principal. And Larry did a great job, but anyway, the job came open. I didn't pay much attention to it. I was happy doing what I was doing. But there was a couple of people that had applied for the job and looked like they had a good chance of getting this principalship. And I was thinking, holy moly, if either one of these people get this, we're in deep trouble here. I don't know where I can work for this outfit. And so anyway, I had a group of teachers, a cohort. They came to me and said, hey, we're concerned about this principalship. We'd like to see you get it. You got license, don't you? Yeah, I've got license. I said, well, you need to apply for this. You need to help this school. So I did. I put my hat in the ring, and I was hired as principal. And so I thought, I don't know. I asked for it. I got it by default. So anyway, but it was a great ride too. I really enjoyed it.
How long were you principal there?
I had taught in the classroom 16 years, and I wound up being principal for 16 years.
And that's when you and I met. They moved part of, I was a teacher at the old Learn Center, and they moved 21st Century up to your building.
Yes, sir.
And I was a part of that at that time. And I can still, to this day, take you to the spot where I was leaning up against the wall after school one day, and you said, have you ever thought about administration? I think you might be a good candidate for that. And I remember leaving that day going, and I had never thought about that as a career. But once I started doing that, I learned, and I've told everybody that, I mean, I learned how to run a school from you. I mean, like I still have things in my office from you that you wrote or gave me that I kept. And I still look at them. I don't look at them every day, but I still pull them out. And you know, one of the things that you told me to do, you said, whatever decision you make, always make it in the best interest of the kid. Mm-hmm. You know, not there's always going to be adults who want you, teachers want you to do this, central office wants you to do that, but make a decision, make the decision that's in the best interest of the kid. That's your job.
Well, that was always the guiding principle. It had to be about the student. Had to be about the student.
And I've still tried to
that
can get you in trouble sometimes.
Well, it can, and it's not always popular. There's always another administrator wanting something, or another teacher wanting something, or a parent wanting a different decision. But, we're in education for kids. If it can't be about kids, then we don't need to be here. I would go to Nashville to meetings, state meetings, vocational directors meetings and principal meetings, and you'd hear all this latest, greatest hoobie-doobie stuff, and you can see accountability after accountability coming down the hall. Well, we'd take a break, and we'd gather around the donut tray or the water fountain, and these other administrators all over the state, they would come together and say, wow, George, how much longer you got? When are you retired? I thought, hey, Joe, I thought you were leaving next month, How much longer you got? How much you in for? And it sounds like a bunch of prisoners. They sound like they're in prison, cannot wait to escape, and they would ask me, how much longer you got? And I said, I'm here indefinitely. Why are we even talking about this? We're supposed to be here about students. If this is our discussion, then we just need to go home quit. If it's not about kids. That always bothered me, and I thought, man, there's more to life than this. There's more to life than this.
Well, I want to move on with your career, but you told me something that when you were teaching and when you started working with kids, that you figured that in order to hone your teaching skills, there was somebody that you felt like that you needed to reflect on, that they were a good teacher and you wanted to see what they did. And you said there were 3 things that you learned. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes. It always bothered me. I'd go to these state meetings and I'd hear all this latest, greatest teaching techniques and all this is great. But I thought, man, this teaching can't be this complicated, guys. The greatest teacher ever was Jesus Christ. Did we not learn this in Sunday school? And I'm thinking, man, so I go back to scriptures and I read, what did the greatest teacher do? Well, one thing he did was set that example. He set the example everywhere he went. That's what we need to be doing, setting the example. Jesus Christ didn't need to be baptized, but he got baptized by John the Baptist and set the example for the rest of us. Not that he needed it, it was because he set the example for everybody. That's a good teaching lesson right there. And then Jesus Christ always taught in parables. It was always related to what they were doing. If you're talking to fishermen, tell a story about fishermen. If you're talking to merchants, it's about merchants or farmers or what. It's got to be relatable. How does the student relate to it? And he would get his point across by just telling the story. Make it relatable. Well, that's what we need to be doing. It needs to be about, if a student doesn't relate, then how many times we go to hear a speaker and we lose interest in the first 5 minutes because they didn't make it interesting. They didn't. How does it relate to me? If it doesn't affect me, why am I even listening? So we got to make it interesting for them, And then the third thing is I saw Jesus Christ, the story about the woman they brought out into the streets and they're going to stone her to death because
John
of
chapter
adultery.
8. Yeah.
One of my favorite stories in the Bible, because Jesus could have said a lot of things. He could have said a lot of things. He could have put a lot of theory on them. He could have put a lot of theology on them. Say, you can't do this because. But he didn't do that. It's just, those without sin cast the first stone. But what he did was make them think. He didn't have to tell them what to do. He said something to make them think for themselves. It's got to be thought-provoking. I thought, if we could teach kids how to think for themselves, what a different world we'd have. all this stuff you see on Facebook and social media, I mean, you can't believe half of it. But a lot of people do believe it. I mean, if they're believing this stuff, why don't we teach people how to think for themselves? Surely you don't believe this stuff, you know? Think for yourselves. And so I thought, man, that's kind of the basis of everything, isn't it? So I just always thought this life is a little more simple than this. I mean, life was never intended to be this way. You know, we've made it complicated. Adam and Eve got up, you know, they're in the Garden of Eve, they got it made. Well, they messed that up. They didn't even have to get up and decide what they're going to wear today. You know, they had it made. Well, we have made this complicated. It seems like all these teaching techniques, and there's a lot of good stuff out here, no doubt about it. But it seems to be a little more simpler than that. And some other things, as a principal, I was trying, how do we motivate people? You know, how do we move this next step? I felt like the vocational ed was kind of a stepchild to education. I thought, man, I want to move beyond this. You know, we're as good or better than anybody else. Why do we have this stigma? We're just not quite as good. Why do we have that? But I looked at school, and we weren't accredited. We weren't accredited as a school. I thought, that's one thing we're going to do. We're going to get state accreditation. I want to be accredited by the Southern Association, just like Clinton High School and just like Anderson County High School. We need to be on the same level. We're just as good or better. And so we started working on accreditation. Took a couple of years. And again, it wasn't me, but I was always pretty good about getting the right people together. Let's gather up people who are smarter than I am. I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I know that. Let's get some smart people in here. So I'd gather people around me that could write some of these proposals and write up all this stuff, and let's turn it in for Southern Association. And we had meetings, and man, people jumped on board, and man, we just kind of took off. And so we got our accreditation. I thought, man, they gave us some clout right here. Mm-hmm. You know, people.
Were you the first vocational school
we
in the state of Tennessee?
We were the first vocational. So there was at one time when the vocational act came along, there was a vocational center in every county in the state of Tennessee. 96 of these things. So ACCTC was Anderson County. Mm-hmm. So when we were accredited, we were the first vocational center, standalone vocational center, to be accredited by Southern Association.
That's pretty cool.
So I was always proud of that. So and so I learned people like to be recognized. You know,
I've still got a Principal Plunger Awards in my office that I won when I was working for you. Still
Principal Plunger Award. Yeah. Nobody knows what that is, do they?
No, but I've still got it sitting in my office.
Funny story. I was always looking for how do we motivate people and teachers. Teachers always doing good things. How do we motivate them? How do we pat them on the back? And so I went to a state meeting, Nashville again, and I go to this session where this principal gets up and says, well, this is what we do at our school, and we do this for fun, and it helps motivate people. And he brought this plunger out, this regular old bathroom plunger. He brought this thing out, and it was all decorated with balloons and candy, and it just different colors and stuff. Ugliest, gaudiest looking thing you ever saw. And he said, here's what we do at my school. Well, the first month of the school, my staff, whoever does the dumbest, most stupidest thing on the whole staff, we get them up at staff meeting and we give them this plunger. And they have to keep this plunger for a whole month. Until the next month, some other staff member will do something dumb or stupid, and they will pass that plunger on to somebody else.
Sounds like he's focusing on the wrong thing.
So I thought, that is the dumbest thing I ever heard. But on the way home, I got to thinking about that. How you turn that around and make it positive? Teachers are always doing things good. So I came back. I got a plunger. I did that. And I decorated it up, it's kind of similar, prettier, and I'd put a sign on it.
Yeah.
And on it, I started taking notes of what things teachers did. They would put in extra time. They would help somebody. They would come a Saturday. They would go to an extra ball game just to hang out with their students. They would put in extra time to help tutor somebody. So I would take notes of all this stuff. So one staff meeting, I took a plunger. I set it up on the table, and I said, "Hey, Mr. Teacher, come forward. Come up front." I said, "You know, I've been watching you, and I've noticed that you've done this and this and this and this, and nobody ever says thank you. And I want you to know that we appreciate it. And now we have an award for you. And on this sign, it says Mr. Teacher, their name, and it said PP Award, Principal Plunger Award. You get the very first PP Award ever awarded. And we just want to say thank you." Well, I thought, it's just going to be a funny thing and we'll move on. Well, man, that kind of took hold. So the next staff meeting, we had another plunger given to a different teacher, and then another one, and another one. As the year went on, I'd given out, 7, 8, 9 of these things, and teachers would take them back to their classroom and they'd put them up on the shelf. It was like a trophy, a real trophy.
Just like in my office.
And so that went on the next year. So it went on for 3 or 4 years. And teachers were getting to fight over. How many PP awards you got? How many you have? Hey, I got 3. I got 2. I don't have one yet. And so it was discussion. And so it was like a little competition. I thought, well, this really took off. I really hadn't thought about it that way. But people want to be recognized in front of their peers. You can say thank you one-on-one, but you got to do it in front of people, their peers. Really let them know that you really appreciate them. It's out there now. You've said it publicly. And so it made a difference. So I took that and I thought, well, how do we do that with students? Well, we started a student of the quarter, recognizing an outstanding student of the quarter. We started to take every program that we have and we recognize an outstanding student, something they've really done, and we're going to go to the auditorium at Anderson County High School, and we're going to recognize them in front of their peers. Take that same concept and let's put it on kids. I probably didn't think that through too well because I remember one of the first, may have been the first, we take about 400 students from our school and we go to Anderson County High School. So the intent is everybody comes into the auditorium, the podium. Somebody comes to the podium and we're going to have an opening ceremony, and then we're going to give an out award to every one of these students. Had about 20 students, recognize them in front. And hopefully they'll get recognized for being the outstanding welding student or the outstanding cosmetology student, and that way they're recognized in front of their peers, and then just like the teacher PP award, they'll have a little competition. They'll be working for that. Hope I can get one of those awards. Well, we bring 400 students in, and I remember going to the podium, principal of the school, thinking everybody's going to get quiet. Well, they didn't. And so, I wrapped the gavel there and whack, and so calmed down some, but it didn't calm down. And I hadn't thought about this part of it. So finally got everybody's attention and said, we are going to come in and we're going to show a little more respect as a large body, as a school body. And we're going to show more respect than this. So we are going to empty this auditorium and we're going to re-enter and we're going to come in a much more mannerly way. And that's what happened. Every teachers got up, everybody went out, we emptied the room, and everybody came back in and sat back down. It was somewhat better, but I didn't think it was that great. I said, okay, let's try that again. And so we did it again. Everybody left, came back in, and wrapped the gavel, and it got quiet. What I hadn't realized was, when people get together, when students get together, the only time they've ever done it is go to a rock concert, let's yell and scream, make all the noise we want to, or let's go to a ball game. Yell, scream, make all the noise. Every time they got into a large group, it wasn't about showing respect to whoever's up front. It was about let's have fun and hooping, and that's the way you displayed in a public meeting. I really hadn't thought about that. So here's another piece that came in, and over time, I think we taught them really a lot how to behave in a large body, and then we got to recognize those students. And once a student came up to get their award, that's the time to hoop and holler. But when there's somebody at the podium, we speak one at a time. We do it orderly. We do it manly. You don't interrupt. And so that was another facet. And so that kind of raised the expectation of the PP awards, student of the quarter, and it kind of raised the expectation. I think the whole school came to a different level.
So after 30-something years in education, what, 33, 34?
32.
32. Okay, I was close. You hang it up, but you're not done. You transition into church work.
Yeah.
How'd that happen?
Well, I had been attending a new church plant. We started in Clinton High School. And I was attending this church, and it was doing really well. And we bought a piece of property here in Clinton, and we built a building. And the church was growing. And so I was on the leadership team at the church and had always been involved in church, but never really thought of that as a vocation. I was, I was in education. So anyway, we were doing very well. The only full-time employee we had was our pastor. We had a few part-time, but we were growing so much we were going to have another employee. So as a leadership team, we decided we're going to hire an administrator to help just manage some of this stuff. So they approached me about being this new position. Again, by default, they came to me and said, "Hey, won't you do this?" So I thought, man, this is dangerous as a cock gun. Leave a good, stable job that I really like, and move into this and go to work for a smaller church. That's I don't know about this. So I kicked that around for almost a year. That went on for almost a year. And so, but there was something inside me just kept saying, you need to do this. There's something else. You need to move on. You need to do something else. And I guess what I didn't realize, the Holy Spirit was just working on me. And I thought, well, I'm going to do this because this is not my character to leave something good and stable and go to something that's kind of iffy. But I did. I thought, well, it's time to do something different. I think I've had some success here. Maybe there's something else out here. There's another venture of life. So here's another season of life, and I think this is really going to be another venture because this is a whole different realm here. So I did. I went to work for the church. We had a pastor that took care of the spiritual side, really, and then I took care of the nuts and bolts and the business side. And
you can run a public school. You can run anything, right?
It was a lot like running the school, a lot like it, and it's kind of funny. A lot of former students and teachers were coming to church there, so it was like the same congregation, in some manners. But I was doing all the business side of it. And so things were doing really well. So about 5 years into it, and I really enjoyed that too. About 5 years into it, our pastor decided to step away. No problems, nothing wrong. It was just one of those seasons of life. It's time for a pastor to move on. And so it kind of left me sitting over the church. So we're trying to decide what we're going to do. Are we going to hire another pastor? What are we going to do here? There were some options on the table. So in the meantime, I'd heard that Faith Promise Church was a very large church in Knoxville. Sure. They had a couple of satellite campuses, and they were interested in coming to Anderson County. And they were interested in looking at a building somewhere in Anderson County. And I knew that. I'd heard rumors all over town. So I thought, wow, man, there's Walmart coming to town. We're just the corner drugstore. And then I'm thinking, well, we have a church building but we don't have a pastor. And then they have a pastor
and no building.
And no building. Why don't we come together here? You know, so I started kicking that around, and so I even had people in the congregation said, "No, you don't want to do that. You don't want to contact another church. You don't want to do that. Why? That's not even biblical. Two churches are not supposed to talk with each other. Two Christians are not supposed to talk. I'm going to go meet with them. You're welcome to go with me." Well, I did. I went to meet with them. Went by myself. Nobody else wanted to go. But I did. I met with leaders at Faith Promise and the pastor and executive pastor, and we had a good conversation. But over the course of the next 6 months, we agreed to merge, and we voted on it, and we merged with Faith Promise. The whole time, Judy, my wife, she's kind of sweaty. So, well, what are you going to do now? You don't have a job. You don't have a job. So, I don't know, but I just know we're supposed to do this. And she'd help me. She'd help me a lot. I mean, you can't run a church without your wife being helping you. You can't do that. And so we had helped the church a lot. And so when we voted to go, then I was out of a job, really. But I wasn't worried about it. Really was not worried. First time in my life, I really wasn't worried about it. And so I get a call from the executive pastor at Faith Promise, and he says, "Hey, we would like for you to be the campus pastor of this new church." Floored me. No, here's another whole different facet that I'm not ready for. But I agreed to do it, and I know why you asked, because we went through this whole process, and I was taking the leadership role. And I know why I need to be there for right now. And for a season, that's probably the right thing. But I'm not the right person for this. I will do it until we can find the right person and get the right person in place. I will do it under those conditions. And so we did. And so we took off. And campus pastor was a different role, but I was doing a lot of it anyway. We were streaming a message. So it wasn't that I was preaching every week, but I was doing everything else. And so it was a neat adventure too. I learned a lot of things there, and
I'm sure
it stretched me for a lot of things, and faith grew pretty strong. But in the meantime, I kept telling him, said, I think I could do some other things for the church that'd be more beneficial than this. And well, we'll get the right person we'll talk to. So it's like I'm going to be stuck here, Not that that's a bad thing, but they would come. Leadership team would come to the church building where I was at here in Clinton, and they would walk in. And they said, "Well, we got this classroom. Boy, it'd be nice if we moved this wall out and put a window over here, stretch this out. Maybe let's put a sink in over here." He said that would really help this building. Maybe we can do that one day. So.
If they only had a guy who knew how to do that.
So they would leave, and so I thought, well, that would be better. So I did it. I just jumped in there during the week, and I tore this wall out and moved it back and, built this counter and did all this thing they were just dreaming about. 4 or 5 weeks later, this leadership team comes in to visit again, evaluate, and they're looking around. Wow, what happened here? How did this get done? I said, well, isn't this what you were talking about? Yeah, this is great. How'd this get done? I said, well, I did it. You mean you can do this? So they figured out I had a toolbox and a pickup truck, and
those were the qualifications.
Those were the qualifications. And so, by golly, we're going to get a pastor in here, and we're going to move you over to facilities. Great. And so that's what happened. We hired another campus pastor that did a great job. And they said, we're moving you to facilities. And so they had a campus here, and they had a campus in Blount County. And they had a large facility, 100,000 square foot building on Pellissippi Parkway. Mm-hmm. And their goal was to have a campus in every county in the state of Tennessee. Pretty big goal. Mm. But we need a construction guy. And so I started working on facilities. I was doing all the maintenance, and I was doing all the planning and building out new campuses. And so when we started out, the first campus or two we built, I would hire in contractors. And I was just kind of the liaison person between the church and the contractor. And so we'd hire the contractor and we'd build a building, build out or renovate or whatever we were doing. Well, a couple of years into it, I thought, we're spending a lot of money paying out to contractors. This is something I could do myself. So here again, here's another season of life. I'd open my mouth and I'd jump in here and say, guys, if I went and got my license for a contractor, a commercial contractor, I could do this and save the church a lot of money. And so that's what I did.
So how old were you when you went back and got a contractor's license?
I was 62.
When you went back and got a contractor's license?
Because I thought, I'm crazy. Here I am, 62, and I'm going, because I had to study. Here's the thing about a contractor license. I was studying, and I took a course on how to take this test too, because when you take this exam, it's not so much about what you know about construction. It's about how to take an exam.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll go back to my high school days. I was not a good reader. I didn't test good. And here I am taking a state exam at 62. I'm crazy. Why am I doing this, you know? But it was good. I was growing and stretching, and it's bigger than me. There's something else out here. It's bigger than me, you know?
Every phase of your life, it's like when a door closes, one opens. And when a door closes, and you just keep walking through these open doors, and it's like another step.
I have after I got my first teaching job, I never asked for another job.
But they all came.
Job showed up, and it was somebody seeking me out. And I thought, well, must be doing something right.
I think that goes back to the jack of all trades part. Let me. I don't want to skip this, and I want to. You've got an interesting hobby, you and Judy. For some reason, y'all decide to jump on motorcycles and go all over the place. What happened there?
After we raised our two boys, and they went on to school and got married, so we're empty nesters. And so me and Judy had always talked about traveling, you know, going all over the United States. And I had already been on a tour bus, but I want to take her and show her, you know, I didn't get to see a lot. We were just watching white lines go down the road, you know, but I wanted to stop and visit national parks and go to mountains, Rocky Mountains, and see things. So anyway, early on when we were dating and, you know, early marriage life, I liked motorcycles, and every now and then I'd borrow a motorcycle, one of my buddies, and I'd go riding, and a lot of times Judy would go with me. And we'd ride around for the day, and we'd say, oh, this was fun, you know. We never could have a motorcycle home because Dad wouldn't allow that. Mm-hmm. You wasn't allowed to get on a motorcycle. That was no. Anyway, so we had done some of that, but after the boys left home, I was the same way. I wouldn't have a motorcycle at home because I didn't want them on one. But I ran across a guy that had a motorcycle for sale one day, had a little 650 Yamaha, and I thought, man, I'd like to just have this to play with. So I bought it, and I took it home. I didn't even tell Judy. So I bring this motorcycle home, and I'm playing with it, and I thought, it'll give me something to do, you know, and pedal with, but she'll never ride with me. Well, little did I know, every time I started that motorcycle up in the driveway, she's like a dog in the back of a pickup truck. I mean, she'd run out there, ears perked up, tail wagging, helmet in hand. Let's go ride. And so we'd ride. So this thing's too small for both of us. So I traded up and got a 1100, and then we just kept going farther and more miles and digger. So I finally thought, if we're going to tour, if we're going to really ride, I'm going to buy a big touring bike. So I did. I bought a Gold Wing. And so we met some other people that had motorcycles and liked to travel. So we started going to surrounding states and doing overnight trips and really enjoyed it and had fun and met a lot of new people that were empty nesters just like us, wanting to get out. And next thing you know, we're going farther and farther. So we just set aside a week or 2 weeks every year. This is our vacation. And so we'd start taking trips. And next thing you knew, we had traveled to all the lower 48 states, and we had been to like 36 national parks.
So you on a bike. You've been to
on a motorcycle.
Every
This
lower
is
48.
So here's another phase I hadn't planned on. I wanted to travel. I never thought about doing it on two wheels. But it was just kind of it just seemed like a natural thing. We had these friends, they were doing the same thing. And so they'd be 4 or 5 motorcycles, couples, all of us about the same age. And so we'd plan a trip, and some of them were planners and some of them weren't. So next thing I knew, I was planning the trips. So I'd put together an itinerary and put out mileage, and we'll go this far this day, and we'll spend the night here, and then we'll get up, we'll go see this, this, and this, and the next day we'll get up and we'll move on. So we planned out a whole trip from here to California and back. And we went to the Canadian Rockies, and we just traveled, just had some great trips.
And you're still doing that?
Still doing that. The older you get, the harder it is. It's physically hard. We've done this for 25 years now.
Wow.
And lots of places we've gone back 2, 3, 4 times.
And Judy's still going with you?
Judy's still going with me, yeah.
Wow.
And it's something we enjoy. We enjoy doing. It's unique. It's different. When you go, you're in the elements. I mean, you're in the rain, sleet, snow, sunshine, whatever it is. But you're just part of the environment. It's not like riding in an air-conditioned vehicle with the windows rolled up. I mean, sometimes you pass a lady on the sidewalk and you can smell her perfume, or some guy on the sidewalk smoking a cigar, or you're following another vehicle and you smell the cigarette smoke coming from the vehicle. I mean, all these things that all your senses are going off, and it was just kind of a neat thing. It's a dangerous sport, no doubt about it. We've been very lucky. We've been about 250,000 miles now on a motorcycle.
250,000 miles.
Yeah, I figured it up several times, and right at that, about 250,000 miles on a motorcycle. Had one accident. We were in Montana, 2002. We're in Montana, and we're going out Highway 2, a little remote area. We're out in the boonies. And out of nowhere, this deer jumps out, and the deer, we're doing 60 miles an hour on a 2-lane road, and this deer runs into the side of the motorcycle. I'm driving along, and the deer head came right in front of my left knee. So he ran right into the side of the motorcycle. And so the bike's just going crazy, and it's all I can do to get stopped. And I did stop about a quarter mile down the road. I finally got stopped. We didn't go down. We didn't turn over.
Okay, so you didn't let it
Stayed
down?
on the pavement, and man, it was a scary deal.
Bet.
But the deer had slammed up against the side of both of us. And of course, Judy's riding on the back behind me, and it broke Judy's arm. And so we had another couple with us, and they were right in front of us. Anyway, they came back. Of course, we got 911. We got Judy taken care of. We got her to the hospital. They had to do surgery on her arm and got her patched up. And so me and Judy flew home, and my buddy that was with us and his wife, they stayed with the equipment and got everything home for us and took care of that end of it. And we've healed up. And the very next year, I told Judy, said, we got to finish this trip. I'll never ask you to get on a bike again, but we've got to finish this trip. And we did. We went back the very next year and finished that same route that we were going to do. Went on up into Canada and went to Oregon, Mount Rainier, and the east, a lot of the West Coast, and came back. And after we finished that trip, said we don't have to do another one, but we've been a few more trips.
Yeah.
So it's been another adventure.
So let me ask you, as we kind of head toward the home stretch here, what chapter of your life surprised you the most? You've done a lot of stuff. Which one surprised you the most?
They were all surprises when it came up. I mean, the music, teaching, principalship, going to work for a church. motorcycling. It's all been a great adventure. It's just, I don't know, I can say one was more than the other. I don't know. I've had some great adventures. Me and Judy talk a lot. If life ended today, I've had the greatest life that I could ever have. We both have.
As much as I love music and wanted to be a part of it, I worked for you for almost 2 years before I realized that you even. I just thought you were a hands-on kind of guy. You just fix stuff, and I never thought about talking to you about music until one day we were in your office and we started talking about music, and I started realizing that you knew a thing or two, and then I got into it, and I thought, wow, you know a whole lot more about this than I do.
Well, I always thought that's ancient history. It's neat stories, but not everybody gets into that. And let me clear something up. You didn't work for me. We worked together.
Oh, right.
We worked together.
Right. Yeah.
Important difference. But I was always lucky to have good people around me. Always. Well, even the music days, I always had more talented people around me than I ever was. It made me look good. When I was in teaching, it was the same way. Teachers built me up. Principal, I always had good people around. I mean, people you've had on this show, Jim Medley, he was on my staff. That was his first teaching job when he left the Army.
Great guy.
But, man, it just rose the level up. We had to meet a new standard now. Jim Medley's on our staff now. Man,
he does have that impact.
He brought that up, Tim Parrott was on my staff. I hired Tim Parrott.
Yeah.
Funny story about Tim Parrott.
Oh, yeah, let's tell one.
One.
Well, however many, don't let me limit you. However many you got.
All right, so I'm principal. Larry Foster is vocational director. We need a machine shop teacher. We're going to have to hire one. Well, it's summertime, and they're having vocational education, vocational directors meeting in Gatlinburg this coming week. And so Larry is going to go to the meeting. I'm going to stay here for a few days, and then I'm going to meet them later in the week. So Larry says, while I'm gone, find us a teacher. We need a machine shop teacher. And here is a stack of applications. And he handed me this big stack of job applications. Okay, so Larry goes on to Gatlinburg, and I'll meet you up there at the end of the week. So I spend the next few days going through these applications and interviewing. Tim Parrott was one of the applicants that was there. Tim had been working in machine shop, and he was going to Mississippi State, and he hadn't even graduated there, so he only had like a year of college or something, which wasn't a problem in vocational ed, but he had the experience in machine shop to teach. We could get him a license. So anyway, I did all the interviews, and Tim Parrott was my top candidate. I thought, man, there's a sharp guy here. So I take my applications, and I go to Gatlinburg, and I meet Larry, and we're sitting in the lobby, and there's
I already know where this is going.
There's a big table sitting there, and I spread out all these applications. He said, well, what'd you find out? And I said, well, I interviewed this one, this one, this one, this one. And I said, I really like these qualities, I like this quality. I say, but this right here, this folder right here, this is our guy right here. Larry didn't say anything. He took the folder. I know he looked at it and he skimmed through it. Then he took it and he threw it in the floor. He threw it in the floor, not on the table, on the floor. What else you got? I said, wait a minute. Well, you just throwing this guy out? He said, I know this guy. I taught him. He was in my ag class at Clinton High School. I said, I know that, but he's our teacher. Said, I don't know. I remember how he was in high school. And so that was the conversation. And so, but we wound up hiring Tim, and look where Tim is today.
Yeah.
Here he is, director.
I knew where that was going, because I told you just last week I had my mid-year review with Dr. Parrott, and I told you we were telling Sid Spiva stories, and he told that story, but the way he told it was, he said that Larry said, "Is this the best you've got?" which is pretty funny.
Well, he may have said that. What I remember him throwing it on the floor, he said, "What else you got? What else you got?" Maybe he did say, "Is this the best you got?" May have been.
Well, let me ask you this last question, and I always ask this of our guests, and I mean, Sid, you've done so many things. I mean, like if you look at of all the different accomplishments that you've had and the successes that you have, if you could go back and talk to yourself when you were 16, 17 years old, after all the experiences you've had and all the things that you've learned, what would you tell that 16, 17-year-old you?
Well, let me say this. Out of all the things I've done, I think the most important thing that I've done, if I had anything to do with it, is I'm really proud of the marriage that me and Judy have. We always said we're going to get married, we're going to show the world, and that was always kind of the theme. And so I'm really proud of that. Had I stayed music, that might not be the case. But anyway, I'm really proud of that. And I'm really proud of the two boys that we raised and the family that we have. 5 grandkids now. And out of all this other stuff we've talked about for ever how long here, that's just small to me compared to family. That is the most important thing right there. Mm-hmm. So I'm really proud of that. I'm proud of these boys and where they've done. And I feel like my dad left a legacy. I want to pass that legacy on. Mm-hmm. And so I'm really proud of that. This kid walking around Clinton High School, if I could grab a hold of him, I'd say, strap your seatbelt on. You're in for a ride of your life. You better apply yourself. You better take advantage of every opportunity you have. You're going to have so many opportunities. Choose wisely. And like my dad said, remember who you are. Remember where you came from.
Sid, I can't thank you enough for coming in the meeting. And I want to tell you, I'm in my 30th year of education, and I'm about to call it a day for what I do. And I want you to know, I've never met anybody in this profession, not one person, that I respect more than I respect you. Without your influence on my life, I'm not doing this. And I certainly, I'm not saying that I've made right decisions at every spot that I had a decision to make, but I will say a lot of the right ones that I made were because of the influence you had on me. So,
well, you were just another one of those that, you get good people around you. You were one of those good people that I had around me. You were a great support, and hopefully poured something into you. But look at the things you've done, and you're carrying on legacy. I mean, even putting this show together. I mean, that's kudos to you for doing that. You're really doing this is a neat idea, something that's going to live on and on. So you're living a legacy, and you're the ones who put that together. You built this alternative program here too. I mean, you had some pioneers before you, but you are the one that really put this thing together and really built a truly fascinating school where you're at.
Well, thank you.
I'm really proud of where you're at. But this show and Storytellers and what Ryan's doing here, I mean, you guys are putting time into this, and there's a lot of time goes into it. And so thank you for doing that, and thank you for pouring into the community.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Well, wow, that was quite an event. We could tell Dolly Parton stories all day. I mean, those were something. I'd like to thank Sid Spiva for starting off our season 2.
Thank you.
Episode 1, not episode 13.
Exactly.
And stay tuned, as we'll have another episode sometime in February. That will be season 2, episode 2. So on behalf of, before we go, let me say, if you have a suggestion that you would like for us to interview, you can always email Ryan Sutton at rsutton@acs.ac. You can email me at dleach@acs.ac with your name of a person you'd like to nominate. And please give us some contact information as well so we can get in touch with those people. But on behalf of Sid Spiva, Ryan Sutton, and myself, please tune in February when we'll have another episode of Storytellers.